So the Gemara in Arvei Psachim tells us about a halacha of Kiddush b'makam suda. That we know, the Torah tells us, that we'll read in a couple of weeks, Zachar Shom HaShabbat L'Kodsho, we have a mitzvah min Torah of reciting Kiddush. So, in addition to the din of Kiddush, one of the ways to fulfill the mitzvah, the Gemara says you need Kiddush b'makam suda. You have to make Kiddush in the place where you're eating. So if I'm making Kiddush here, I can't go home and then eat my meal. I have to either make another Kiddush or have a Suda here. So that's Kiddush b'makam Suda. So there's 2 days in the Rashbam exactly. What does it mean Kiddush b'makam Suda? Like what's the lumdus behind it? Like what's the concept? Who's it for? What's wrong with the Kiddush by itself? Why can't I just make Kiddush and that's it? Why do I need a Kiddush b'makam Suda? So there are two opinions in the Rashbam whether is it a din in the Kiddush or a din in the Suda? In other words, why do I need makam Suda? Is it to enhance the Suda, that I have a Suda and therefore you make a bracha with the wine and therefore you have a makam Suda? No, it's a din in Kiddush that to strengthen. You just don't have a boy pragaf and you go down and you eat. So where's the nafkamina? What's the difference between din in Kiddush or din in Suda? So this is a very, very pragmatic machlokes. What does it mean by Kiddush b'makam Suda? So we know generally Suda means like pas. By kol ha'taraku, when we talk about a Suda, we assume you're having bread at the meal. It's a birchas hamazon. So Kiddush b'makam Suda, does that mean I have to have bread? Or Kiddush b'makam Suda is enough just to have mizonos? In other words, to fulfill my mitzvah of Kiddush b'makam Suda, is it, for certainly if you have it over, you make Kiddush and you wash and eat your meal, then it's not a kshayla. Could I make Kiddush and not have bread, but just have cake, and then go home and eat my meal later without another Kiddush? In fact, that's a common occurrence every Shabbos morning. Many shuls have a Kiddush, but they don't have chal or bread. Many people, they go ahead, they make Kiddush, they have their cake, kogel, and then they go home. Do they have to make another Kiddush when they go home? What do people do? Do they go ahead and make another Kiddush? So this pragmatic question is actually a fundamental machlokes, the Vilna Gaon versus the Gaonim. The Gaonim say, Kiddush b'makam Suda, Suda means mizonas. It's enough to make Kiddush over cake. That's for the purposes of Kiddush b'makam Suda, that's enough to be Yotzei. And the Vilna Gaon says no. Yeah, you need pas. And therefore, so according to the Vilna Gaon, you can't, at first glance, it seems to be a problem, what most shuls do. Because what's the problem? Because, okay, so why is it a problem? Okay, so you're not Yotzei Kiddush according to the Gra. You just go home and make a Kiddush at home. Why is it a problem? Okay, there's two different issues. One, do you fulfill your mitzvah of Kiddush? So Gra is saying, no, okay, so I'm not, so I'll go fulfill my mitzvah of Kiddush. So what's the potential problem? The problem is, according to the Gra, perhaps you could argue, if you're not Yotzei Kiddush b'makam Suda, you're not Yotzei Kiddush, hence it's an issur to eat then. So basically you're eating without the mitzvah of Kiddush, and therefore there's an issur of eating on Shabbos without making Kiddush. So our minhag seems to follow the Gaonim, that most people make Kiddush and shul on cake, and that's it. And most people go home. You can't hurt. You go home, you make another Kiddush. But at first glance, it seems to be going with the Gaonim, that our practice. Rav Selevan says it's not so simple. We can even explain it according to the Gra, because there's another machlokes. There's a machlokes between the Rambam and the Rabbi on, do you need, in other words, is there an issur achila on Shabbos morning without Kiddush? Is there an issur achila? Is there a need to for Kiddush regarding whether it's a discussion whether women are chayiv in the Kiddush as well Shabbos morning? And the question is there an issur achila to eat before Kiddush? So in general, so the Rambam says yes. Just like there's an issur Friday night to eat before you make Kiddush, so to Shabbos morning. And the Rabbi says, what are you talking about? There is no mitzvah of Kiddush. It's not a real Kiddush Shabbos morning. It's Kiddush. We call it Kiddush, but it's just to enhance the Suda. You should make So it's not so according to Rabbi, there is no Isser Achila to eat anyway before. So therefore, perhaps you could, maybe the Vilna Gaon holds like the Ravid, and therefore it wouldn't be a problem. What we do is we go ahead, we can eat Kiddush, even according to the Vilna Gaon, it's okay, because there's no Isser Achila to eat before Kiddush. And then you go home according to the Gra, so maybe our minig is with the Gra. As long as you go home and make Kiddush, maybe if we pass it like the Ravid, the Pashas we pass it like the Ram, but if we went with the Ravid, so then we can even fit the Gra. But where won't we have it? Friday night would be the issue. Could I make, some people have a minig of making Kiddush and Shul Friday night. Some shuls do, some don't. So really the ideal is you're supposed to give it to a katan to drink, because it's not Kiddush b'makam suda. But bottom line, push comes to shove. If there is no katan, then you should drink enough of a shear where you can make an ala gefen, and a b'di'eved, some say you could be yotze Kiddush b'makam suda, just like some say with cake, you could have it with, if you have enough wine. It really comes up in the Pesach hotel, when there's no real, when you get the gebraks and stuff. And many people go with the Chasidish Shabbat. They don't have mazonas cake. So in the whole hotel, the cake looks like, you can't tell the difference by looking or even tasting, but it's not a mazona. So it's a big issue, potential issue. If you want to make Kiddush Shabbos morning, you go to the Hashkama Minyan, lunches, whatever, in a couple of hours you want to eat. So what do you make Kiddush over? So of course you could have a meal. That's an option. Kiddush, so you don't want to have matzah. So that's a big shayla. So what you'd have to do is you'd have to make Kiddush and drink enough the requisite grape juice or wine to fulfill Kiddush b'makam suda. So the question is, what about Kiddush on cake Friday night? We do Kiddush on cake Shabbos morning. What about Friday night? Let's bring out the cake. It's like in some Kiddush clubs that I heard they introduce crackers now because of this Kiddush b'makam suda issue. But either that's a separate discussion. But what about Friday night? So is it okay also I can make Kiddush over cake? I don't need the challah? So according to the Gaonim, yeah. The Yotze Kiddush Makam Suda with Kiddush, you have to go home, you need 3 Sudas, you have to go home and have bread for your Suda, but according to the Gaonim, even Friday night you could be Yotze Kiddush Makam Suda over cake, and according to the Vilna Gaon, you can't. There's no getting out of it, because everyone holds it's an Isser Achila to eat before Kiddush Friday night. So where does it come up? Who eats Friday night? I'll tell you where it comes up. It comes up Leil Simchas Torah in this shul. Different shuls have different minhagim. Some people, they go home, they daven, they eat the meal and come back. Here they have to do the hakafets first, and they drag them out, maybe for good reasons, to make some money for the shul or whatever. And we don't eat the meal till an hour or two later. So what they do is they sell the taresis, so they have the schnapps, and they have the cake and stuff. So the question is, assuming Kiddush Leil Yantav is the same din, it's Yantav Sheni, but assuming Kiddush on Yantav is the same halach, it's a machokas whether Kiddush on Yantav is the rice of the Rabbanan, but assuming it's the same, can you do that? Can you make Kiddush over cake, Simchas Torah, and eat, and then go and have your Suda after? So according to the Gaonim, yes. According to the Gra, it's a problem. You can't be Yotze Kiddush, but Makam says you're not Yotze Kiddush, and therefore you're eating before Kiddush. So according to the Vilna Gaon, so Meikar Adin, I think we paskin like the Gaonim, so therefore you have B'yesh al mi lismach. See, I don't even mind his pragmatic reasons. I don't drink. I like giving shir on l'chaim. I don't actually do the l'chaims, and I'm not so impressed with the selection of cakes out there. So therefore, it's true I'm going to be hungry, but I'm hungry every Friday night waiting for you guys to stop draining Friday night. So I have the same problem every week. So it's a more pragmatic issue. I don't have the schnapps, I don't want to eat the lousy cake. So therefore, I'm machmer like the Gra, and I wait to make Kiddush over. What I do is I wait for Leslie to come to bring the good challah, and I make my Kiddush over challah. So that's the issue here. To summarize, that's some of the issues in terms of this major machlokas, the Vilna Gaon and the Gaonim. I'm just using those two, but it's more than them in terms of this issue of Kiddush b'makam suda. Can you be yotze with cake or not? The minik seems to be in the morning, yes, and even we could fit in the Gra with the Ravid, but the real test comes Friday night. We don't necessarily do it Friday night, but Meikar Adin, we probably pass like the Gaonim, and l'chatchila, there's no harm. You might as well go home and make Kiddush again and to fulfill Kiddush B'Makam Suda like the Gra as well. We were discussing some inyan. Kiddush will continue regarding the Seder HaKiddush. So we know Friday night, when we make Kiddush, so we begin with Vayichulu, but that's just the later minhag, about some have a minhag expands it, but Vayichulu. But the main Kiddush, and the Mishnah and Brachas discusses, is Borei Pri Hagafen is one component of Kiddush, and Makadesh HaShabbos is the other component. So we have, those are the basic two components of Kiddush. So the Gemara in Brachas, Daf Nun Beis and Dalet, has a Machlokas Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. What is the order? Do you do Borei Pri Hagafen and then Makadesh HaShabbos? Do you make the bracha on wine first, then the bracha on the Kedushas Hayom? Or do you do the Kedushas Hayom first, and then Borei Pri Hagafen? So it's a Machlokas in the Mishnah between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. So Beis Shammai says, first you make the bracha on Makadesh HaShabbos, and then you do Borei Pri Hagafen. And Beis Hillel disagrees and says you do Borei Pri Hagafen and then Makadesh HaShabbos. And the Gemara gives reasons for each. The one that whether it's the Yayin's Gorim, the Kedusha, the Kedushas Hayom, so the Gemara, so the Mishnah, the Gemara gives different reasons for both. So I don't know about you, but my minhag is to go with Beis Hillel. I make Borei Pri Hagafen first, and then I do Makadesh HaShabbos, and that's the accepted. That's the way we paskin. So there's a question of the Slach, the Pnei Yoshua. Many Achronim are bothered because one of the reasons the Gemara, the Mishnah gives, what is the reason for Beis Shammai, reason for Beis Hillel? Why do we make Borei Pri Hagafen first and then Makadesh HaShabbos? It's because we have a famous principle in the Talmud, Tadir V'she'eno Tadir Tadir Kodem. If you have a frequent mitzvah and a less frequent mitzvah, so in contrary to Western society, which gives more credence to once in a while things, events, in Judaism we go with the everyday things. And that's why Shabbos, has the highest level of Kedusha, comes every week. In fact, it's a machlokas in the Gemara and Megillah, whether how many aliyahs Shabbos has and how many aliyahs Yom Kippur has. So we have three aliyahs during the week. Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed we have 4. Yontif we have 5. So there's actually a dispute in the Gemara whether Shabbos 6, Yom Kippur 7, or Yom Kippur 6 and Shabbos 7 the way we go. So, and the Ran writes the number of aliyahs tells us, is an indicator of what the Kedushas Hayom of that day is. So the fact that Shabbos is the most aliyahs, that shows it's the holiest day of the year. So we have a principle, Tadir V'she'eno Tadir, and then the classic example is every morning, or most mornings, we put on our talis before we put on, every morning we put on our talis. But most mornings we put on our talis before the tefillin. Based on the principle of Tadir, talis is every day, tefillin is most of the days, hence talis comes first. So we have a principle, Tadir V'she'eno Tadir Tadir Kodem, that we're familiar with. However, we have another principle. Let's say you have one mitzvah, which has two components. And let's assume there's a biblical component, there's a Torah component to the mitzvah, and there's a rabbinical component to the mitzvah. So, the Slach, the Pnei Yoshua, others point out that if you have a biblical component and a rabbinical component in the same mitzvah, so you do the biblical component first, and then you do the rabbinical. So you don't worry about Tadir. The mitzvah in Torah beats out the mitzvah midrabanan. So therefore that leads the Pnei Yoshua and others to the following question: that if you have a principle of Tadir, that's true, but that's only if all things are equal. If you have a biblical versus a rabbinical, the biblical wins even if it's not Tadir. So if that's true, which is the principle they're saying is true, so they asked the Shiloh, then the Beis Shammai should be right, not Beis Hillel. We do Borei Pri Hagafen first, and then Kiddush Dom Tadir V'she'eno Tadir. Sounds good, but the problem is that Borei Pri Hagafen, there's another machlokas by Kiddush. How much of Kiddush is daraisa. We learn out from the pasuk Zochar Yom HaShabbos L'Kadsho that Kiddush is min HaTorah. The question is how much of Kiddush is min HaTorah. So you have three opinions in the Rishonim. We have the Rambam's opinion that only Kiddush b'dvarim, by saying special words of praise about Shabbos, you fulfill your mitzvah min HaTorah of Kiddush. Over wine is only rabbinical. But you don't need wine at all. From a biblical level, this praising Shabbos is enough to fulfill your mitzvah min HaTorah. The Tosfos in Arvei Psachim has 2 days. One opinion says no. He says it's not enough just to say the words, you have to say it over a cup of wine. Zachreo al hayayin. You don't have to drink the wine. Drinking the wine is rabbinical, but making it over a cup of wine, that is also biblical, and just the drinking is rabbinical. And you have the third opinion that all three are biblical. And in fact, this is a machlokas Rashi and Tosfos in the beginning of Nazir. We know one of the prohibitions of a Nazir is not to drink wine. So what does a Nazir do for Kiddush then? Every Friday night, what does he do for Havdalah? So the Gemara says, even though a Nazir is usher for wine, but what about Yayin the mitzvah? So what about what is wine of mitzvah? Kiddush v'Havdalah. So the question is how you learn, what is the Gemara saying? So that's a major machlokas Rashi and Tosfos. It's not really Rashi, it's the fake Rashi, and Nazir it's the Mefarish, they call him. So Rashi learns that that a Nazir drinks Kiddush, he makes Kiddush over wine Friday night. Why? Because Rashi seems to learn like that third shita we said, that not only is Kiddush over wine daraisa, drinking the wine, because obviously if drinking is the wine daraisa, then we can understand why a Nazir has to drink it. That when he took the Nazir, it was obviously wouldn't apply Yayin the mitzvah. And Tosfos disagrees and says, no sari, the Nazir cannot make Kiddush over wine, because it's mushpa ve'omei me Har Sinai. You already took a shvu on Har Sinai that you're not going to violate the Torah, and therefore he can't. Tosfos learns clearly that the drinking of the wine is only rabbinical. So this machlok is whether drinking the wine is biblical or rabbinical as a nafkamina, whether a Nazir could actually make it. Those are three shitas. So they're pointing out that Kiddush is daraisa. So when you make a boy, so we say we go like Beis Hillel, we make a boy priyagafen first, and then we make a Makadesh Shabbos because Tadir V'Sheino Tadir Kodem, that we make a blessing on wine all the time. We only make the Makadesh Shabbos once a week. So therefore, Tadir wins. However, we just said we have another principle. Let's say you have a biblical mitzvah versus a rabbinic mitzvah. So clearly these Achronim are assuming, like the Rambam, or even perhaps Shita number 2, but let's say like the Rambam, that only Kiddush b'dvarim is min HaTorah. So therefore what? So therefore what? So you have a mitzvah of Kiddush min HaTorah, of Makadesh HaShabbos. You have a mitzvah midrabanan of making over wine. So we have a principle. We said if you have two components of one mitzvah, you do the biblical before the rabbinical. So Beis Shammai seems to be right. We should be making Makadesh HaShabbos, and then we should be making Bar. So how do we answer how a minhag seems to go against it? How do we explain Beis Hillel? So comes along the Achronim, the Pnei Yoshua, the Slach, and says no, it's no kasha. What the Mishnah is talking about is, we're working with the Rambam. The Rambam's opinion is that you fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush with words alone. That's what the Rambam writes. Then the Magen Avram extends the Rambam. He says, based on the Rambam, that you can fulfill the mitzvah with words alone, when you daven Friday night davening, and you make the bracha in Friday night davening, Makadesh HaShabbos, you fulfill your biblical mitzvah of Kiddush. So therefore, when you get home, you're only obligated rabbinically in Kiddush. So the Shagas, to the Slach writes, you're right. Biblical mitzvah beats out rabbinical. But in our scenario, we're talking about someone who already davened Ma'ariv. So therefore, they fulfilled the biblical mitzvah of Kiddush completely. So now you have two rabbinical mitzvahs. So then you go with the principle of Tadir. However, the Tzrach says, but based on this, he says, if you take it to the logical extreme, he says, what happens if someone didn't daven Ma'ariv? And I'll give an easy case, a woman who's chayiv in Kiddush min HaTorah also. So let's say a woman didn't daven Ma'ariv. So, and let's say her husband's out of town, she's making the Kiddush. So according to the Tzlach, the woman should make Mekadesh HaShabbos first, and then do Boyer Pri Hagafen. That's how much he takes it to the logical extreme, that the Deraisa takes precedence over the Rabban. The only reason we're lenient is because you already fulfilled your mitzvah min HaTorah already. And so that's the opinion of the Tzlach. However, the Shagas Aryeh and the Pri Chadash also agrees with the principle. The Pri Chadash says like this: we have a mitzvah of Kriya Shema. So there's a whole discussion. We know Kriya Shema is Deraisa, or it's a Machoket in the Gemara, but we have Kriya Shema is Deraisa. How much of Kriya Shema is Deraisa? So the Ramban Shita, Pasuk Rishon, only Shema Yisrael Hashem Echad, that's biblical, the rest is rabbinical. Rashi writes in the beginning of Brachas, the first Parsha Rishona, that's biblical. The Pri Chadash writes the first two Parshios are biblical, and the Rambam holds all three are biblical. So keep that in mind. So comes along the Pri Chadash and says, he quotes the Gemara in Brachas. The Gemara wants to know, why do we have the order? Why are the first two Parshas in Kriya Shema? Why do we begin with Shema and then go V'haya Mishamoa? Why isn't it Lama Kadma Shema to V'haya Mishamoa? The Gemara. Why do we read? Why was paragraph 1 chosen as paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 is 2? Why couldn't 1 be 2 and 2 be 1? So the Gemara says for good reasons, because paragraph 1, you're accepting Ol Malchus Shamayim, you're accepting the yoke of heaven. So that's the first step. Once you accept the yoke of heaven, then paragraph 2, you accept the yoke of mitzvah. So therefore, that's the Gemara. Comes along the Pri Chadash. From here we see the principle that a biblical mitzvah always takes precedence over rabbinical. How do we see it? He says because Pri Chadash holds they're both biblical. He says because if you're telling me only Parsha Rishona was biblical and the second Parsha was rabbinical, then who cares about Kabbalah's Ol Malchus? That won't be irrelevant. We'd always go with this say simply, the first Parsha is biblical, the second is rabbinical, that's all. The fact that Gemara had to come up with another reason of Kabbalah's Ol Malchus, that's a raya that they're both biblical. But what do we see is the principle, he agrees to the principle that if you have two components of one mitzvah, the biblical mitzvah takes precedence. That's what most assume. Comes along the Shagas Aryeh in Simon Beis, one of the classical Achronim, and he says, what are you talking about? There is no principle like that. But it's good you make up a principle and say, okay, now that the principle is like this is the way it is. There's no explicit source for this principle. So he says the principle doesn't exist. He said there is no principle. If you're doing two mitzvahs, you have one mitzvah which has two components, a biblical aspect and a rabbinical. There is no proof that you do the biblical first over the rabbinical. And what's his raya? What's the Shagas Aryeh's proof that there is that this isn't true? We do it every Friday night, he says. Friday night Kiddush, what do? Boy Pri Hagafen, that's rabbinical, Kiddush Halayayin. Kedushas Hayom is biblical, yet we make the Boy Pri Hagafen before. So it shows the whole principle is wrong. See, they had to come up with the principle that they already daven Ma'ariv, and therefore that's how you explain the Mishnah. He says, what are you talking about? That's not what the Mishnah doesn't say about anyone davening Ma'ariv. So he says he's in denial. The principle doesn't exist. Biblical doesn't be rabbinical. If you're doing both of them, it doesn't tell you anything about Kadima. Tadir tells me about Kadima, and therefore Tadir Sheino Tadir, Tadir Kodem. In fact, that's why he wants to bring another raya. We'll hear more about it during Sfiras HaOmer time. But he says, let's say you're in the middle of your meal, or let's say, forget what you're in the middle of your meal. Let's say it's nighttime, it's dark, it's night, and you haven't done the mitzvah of Kriyas Shema yet, let's say you daven Ma'ariv early in shul, and now you're waiting to do so, and you didn't count Sfira, and now it's Seitzach Chavim now. Should I daven Kriyas Shema first, or should I daven Sfirat Omer? So he's saying, according to because one's biblical, I'm assuming Sfira is rabbinical. So therefore, according to the first school of thought, that the Slach, the Pnei Yoshua, if you have one mitzvah with two components, so therefore of course you should say Kriyas Shema and then Sfira. Shagar says there's nothing doing. There is no order. You could choose whichever one you want. You can get into because you get into, or let's say Birkas Hamazon, or maybe he says also by Birkas. No, he says let's say during the week Birkas Hamazon versus Sfira. Same thing. Birkas Hamazon is Daraisa. So the Shagas Aryeh is cholek on the principle, and he says my biggest proof is Friday night Kiddush. So let's summarize. So we pointed out we wanted to know what is the Seder Kadima of Kiddush. So the Mishnah says in Nun Aleph Hamabez it was Machokas Beis Hillel Beis Shammai, whether you do the B'Kadesh HaShabbos then Boyer Pri HaGafen. We follow Beis Hillel. We do Boyer Pri HaGafen and B'Kadesh HaShabbos. Since to be based on Tadir V'Sheino Tadir, it's based on Tadir. So it comes along, they're going to say, well, what do you mean Tadir? It's true, it is Tadir, but we have a more important principle, biblical versus rabbinical. If you have two components of one mitzvah, the biblical beats out. So it goes against, as the Mishnah we said. So they said, no, our Mishnah is talking about where you already fulfilled Kiddush Minat Torah, and you're only dealing with two rabbinicals. How do I know this is true, that a biblical beats out a rabbinical? That's what the Pri Chadash points out, that when you have, why did the Gemara have to give a reason by Shmak, Kabbalah's Omach Shamayim versus Kabbalah's Mitzvahs? Just say the first parish is biblical, the second one's rabbinical, and then they're both biblical, and then you have to come on to the other reasons. That's the principle. And the Shagatai disagrees, no principle exists. And just let me point out, that's based on the Slach, he would say, if a woman who didn't have a Ma'ariv, he actually says, we don't pass it that way, a woman should make the Mekadesh HaShabbos first. That's how far he takes his principle before Boer Pri. We don't pass it now. I haven't seen anyone do it that way. And then again, I haven't seen a woman make Kiddush, because usually if I'm there, I'm the one making Kiddush. But even though women do make Kiddush, but even if I did see women making Kiddush, I don't think they'd be making it anyway. Maybe they'd have a Ma'ariv anyway. You could say the odds are probably a woman who's making Kiddush has a better chance that she'd have a Ma'ariv perhaps, but that's not that's an empirical we'll have to work on. But either way, getting back here, so therefore they point out that the Pri Chadash disagrees, and so therefore it comes out, we pass in the bottom line, keep up your minhag, Boer Pri HaGafen and Mekadesh HaShabbos. Even a woman or a man who hasn't done a Ma'ariv, we don't seem to go with him Lamaisa on that issue, but we do assume that it is that you do fulfill your mitzvah, your deraisa in Kiddush in davening, and so it comes out a fundamental machlokas between the Shargat Aryeh and all the other Achronim, whether when you're doing one mitzvah with two components, is there any kadima, is there any precedence to the biblical over Kiddush? As the Torah tells us, Zachar es Yom HaShabbos L'Kadsho. We remember the Shabbos day and sanctify it. So what exactly is the nature of the mitzvah of Kiddush? What's the lumdus behind it? How does it actually work? So there seems to be a major dispute between the Rambam and the Ramban on what is the purpose, what is the nature behind the mitzvah minat Torah of Kiddush. So the Rambam writes in Hilchos Shabbos that there's a special mitzvah of Zechira, remembering of Shevach v'Hodah. You have special praise about the day of Shabbos. So his focus is on the word Zachar. The ikar of the mitzvah of Kiddush is on the remembering, that you have to realize it's a special day of Shabbos, that 6 days a week we work, the 7th we rest. That's how the Rambam learns. The Ramban, Nechmanides, seems to learn totally differently. He compares it to the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh, the mitzvah of sanctifying the moon, like we read about last week. When they had Eidim, they used to go Mekudesh, find out when exactly to set up the calendar, or, as he says, the mitzvah of Yovel, the Kidashtem Eshnas HaChamishim, and we sanctify the 50th year. That's the mitzvah of Yovel. So Beis Din used to play a role to sanctify it. So the Ramban compares the mitzvah of Kiddush Friday night to the mitzvah of Kiddush Beis Din, the Kiddush of Yovel. In fact, it's similar to as well the concept of Kedushas HaBachor, the concept of the Kedusha of the firstborn, that we know he's Kedush Kadosh Me'elav. A Bachor is Kadosh in the womb. Yet there's a mitzvah of Makadish Pepeh anyway, so to Kiddush, Shabbos is Kviya V'Kaime, as the Gemara says in Be'ah Daf Yud Zayin, that the Kiddush is already set up for Ma'aseh Bereshis. 6 days a week we work, but it's to the purposes comparable to Kiddush basis. So my nafkamina. So it's nice to say the Rambam's focus is on Zohar, and the Ramban focus on Lakadsho. The issue is the Kedusha. So, but practically speaking, come Friday night, ben the Rambam and the Ramban, you got to make Kiddush Friday night. So my nafkamina, what's the difference if I say it's Betoras Zechira Shevach V'Hodah, or Kiddush is basically Kedusha based it. So one major nafkamina is, what is the status of Havdalah? What is the status of Havdalah? Is Havdalah a mitzvah min HaTorah or a mitzvah midrabanan? Is it similar to Kiddush or not? So the Rambam writes in Hilchos Shabbos, he actually compares, he equates the mitzvah of Kiddush and Havdalah. He basically says the bookends, they both serve the same purpose. That you have to mention the special praise of Shabbos b'chnisaso, in its entrance, uv'yitziaso, in its exit. So Kiddush is in its entrance, Havdalah. So according to the Rambam, fundamentally Kiddush Havdalah is the same. It's two different mitzvahs, it's the same mitzvah, it's the same source. Zachar Shom HaShabbos L'Kadsho. So the Rambam holds it's Havdalah is Daraisa, because he holds it's on the same source of Zachar. But according to the Ramban, there's no concept of when Yovel's over, we make a Havdalah, or after the Mekudesh, there's no concept. Havdalah, it might be Daraisa D'Rabbanan, but it's nothing to do with the mitzvah of Kiddush. It's totally independent mitzvah. So that's a major nafkamina. According to the Rambam, Kiddush and Havdalah learn from the same source, while according to the Ramban, Havdalah has nothing to do with Kiddush, except coincidentally it always happens right after Shabbos, but there's no inherent connection. My nafkamina, whether that Havdalah that you learn out from Zachar, or you learn out from some other source, let's say in Parashat Shmini, some call Lahavdil ben HaKodesh L'chol. It's not talking about Shabbos, but some learn that pasuk as a source for Havdalah. So my nafkamina is a major nafkamina, is whether women are chayiv in Havdalah or not. Why would women? Havdalah seems to be the classic mitzvah asay shazman grama, the classic time-oriented mitzvah. So why should I say women are chayiv in Havdalah? You might ask, why would I say women are chayiv in Kiddush? Kiddush is the classic mitzvah asay shazman grama also. So really, Pashas, I would have said the pata from both. However, the Gemara tells us otherwise. The Gemara in Brachas Daf Chaf Amud Aleph, ironically, or maybe not ironically, maybe hashkachically, Shvuas Daf Chaf as well, also has a similar Gemara. Nashim chayavas bekiddush hayom dvar Torah. Women are obligated in the mitzvah of Kiddush min ha-Torah. They have the same obligation as a man. They're both chayiv in Kiddush min ha-Torah. And so the Gemara asks, mitzvah asay shazman gramahu. It's a time-oriented mitzvah. So if it's a time-oriented mitzvah, why a woman chayiv? So that's the famous drush in the Gemara that it says, we're going to read next week, Zachar Shom HaShabbos L'Kadsho. in the summer when V'aschanan will read Shomer Shabbos V'kadsho. The Gemara has the famous drasha called Sheyeshnu B'Shmira Yeshnu B'Zechira. Whoever's included in the prohibition of keeping Shabbos, Yeshnu B'Zechira is also included in the positive mitzvah of keeping Shabbos. So the Gemara says that even though women are patur from mitzvahs asay shazman grama, they're chayiv in Kiddush based on the hekesh of kosher Yeshnu B'Shmira Yeshnu B'Zechira. So clearly everyone, that's the Gemara, everyone agrees to Kiddush. There's no machlokas. Women are chayiv in Torah in Kiddush. However, according to the Rambam's Kiddush is that not only does this halacha apply to Kiddush, but it applies to Havdalah as well, because the whole source of Kiddush is Zechira Shevach Vodah, B'chnisaso U'B'yitziaso. So Havdalah also is the bookend, and therefore, just like the Gemara tells me, woman is chayiv in Kiddush min Torah, so too she is chayiv in Havdalah min Torah. And according to the other Rishonim, the Ramban, that this, even if the chayiv min Torah, even if Havdalah is a mitzvah min Torah, they should be patur because it's a mitzvah sasei shazman grama. And it's a machlokas Rishonim in general, whether Havdalah is biblical or rabbinical. But even if Havdalah is a mitzvah min Torah, but if it's not connected to Zakar, women should be patur from it. So that's a major nafkamina, whether women are chayiv in Havdalah. Now, according to the Rambam, they're chayiv min Torah in Havdalah just like Kiddush. And according to the Ramban, it's based on Kiddush HaChodesh, it has nothing to do with it. In fact, it ties into as well what we said by the halacha of Kiddush Shabbos morning. There's a whole discussion whether women are chayiv in Kiddush Shabbos morning. As we point out, they're definitely chayiv in Kiddush Friday night, the same chayiv as a man. Are they chayiv? So that's a whole discussion whether again, it's a Kiddush Shabbos morning, as Kiddushei Rabbah is only Kiddush D'Rabbanan, and it's just a fancy name. They call it the Great Kiddush, so you should make a mockery out of it because it's only a Borei Pri Hagafen. And people have other minhagim they add on V'shamru or whatever different minhagim they add on, but the major Kiddush is basically Borei Pri Hagafen. So it's called Kiddushei Rabbah, the Great Kiddush, so you shouldn't look down upon it. So therefore, the Kiddush Shabbos morning as well, why do we make Kiddush Shabbos morning? Like, in other words, is there an Isser Achila? Is there a prohibition to eat before Kiddush Shabbos morning? So it's a machlokas, the Rambam and the Ravid. Again, it's a separate issue whether eating before davening. That's a separate discussion. You do, you don't. That's one question. But in addition, on Shabbos, in addition to the issue of eating before davening, so let's assume you already davened already. So once you finish Shacharis, you're chayiv in Kiddush. So then, is there an Isser to eat before? So the Rambam writes, yeah, just like there's an Isser to eat before Kiddush Friday night, there's an Isser to eat before Kiddush Shabbos morning. And the Ravid screams, Chai v'kaya, machaye roshi. What is the Rambam talking about? Why in the world should there be an Isser achila to eat before Kiddush Shabbos morning? So it's a major dispute between the Rambam and the Ravid on whether one is prohibited to eat before your Kiddush L'chaim Shabbos morning. So what's in the Kudas HaMachlokas? Like, what are they arguing about? Why yes, why not? So it seems to be consistent. It seems to tie into our Machlokas, the Rambam and the Ramban, on what is the nature of the mitzvah of Kiddush. So the Rambam is consistent with his view that the mitzvah of Kiddush is Zechira Shevach V'Hodah. So min Torah, you only have a mitzvah Friday night. But the rabbis as well, since you can have a meal, you have to have you have 3 students, but at least 2 students on Shabbos. So the rabbis instituted the mitzvah d'Rabbanan k'ein d'Oraisa tikkun. They patterned the rabbinical mitzvah after the biblical, and the din d'Rabbanan, you make Kiddush. So too they extended the Isser Achila. The same way we say you don't eat before you make Kiddush Friday night. So too midrabanan, you don't eat before you make Kiddush Shabbos morning. So what is the Rabbi holds? The Rabbi holds it's not a din of Kiddush. We call it Kiddushei Rabbah, but he goes with the Ramban Shita. What's Kiddush? We don't do a second. We don't Makadish Yovel the next day or halfway in. We don't do Kiddush based in the second time. There's no din d'Rabbanan. Once you Makadish something, that's it. So there's no din. In the middle of the day, you're waking up at 12 o'clock. oh yeah, let me sanctify the day of Shabbos. Like, what kind of concept? It's sanctified already from the night before. You're not doing anything. We call it Kiddush Rabbi, but it's not a din of Kiddush. Why do we make it? Chazal wanted to give credence to the Suda, so to make the Suda more chashiv, we make it over Priya Gafim, but nothing to do with Kiddush. So that's the fundamental machlokas. And the Ravid seems to go with the Ramban, or the Ramban go with they work together, and therefore these are two major nafkaminas. We have a major machlokas between the Rambam and the Ramban on what is the nature of the mitzvah of Kiddush. Is it based on Zechira Shevach Vodah like the Rambam, or is it based on Kiddush based in Shnas HaYovel like the Ramban? My nafkamina. So far we've named two. We have the major one is whether Havdalah is Havdalah a mitzvah in Torah and a woman chayiv in Havdalah. According to the Rambam, yes, because it's part of the mitzvah of Zechira Kosher Yeshna B'Shir Yisuf Zechira. The Rambam says Havdalah has nothing to do with Zachar, and therefore Pashas women should be patur from Havdalah. It's a mitzvah, whether it's the right to Rabbanan, it's a Zman Grama. And perhaps the second nafkamina is whether there's an Isser Achila to eat before Kiddush, what we call Kiddushei Rabbi Shabbos. The Rambam consistent with this view. It's a din of Zechiras. So it's good to have a reminder during the day also. Why not mention, it's a good Shabbos, we do it all the time. The more you mention it, the better. So the rabbi set up a din d'Rabbanan not to eat before you make Kiddush Shabbos morning, and the Rabbi, it's like the Ramban. There's no concept of a Kiddush in the middle of the day. It's Kiddush based in. It's only a din. It's to strengthen the Suda. So therefore we have a Boi Priya Gafim before the meal to enhance the Suda Shabbos. Kiddush, as we're going to read this coming Shabbos, in the fourth commandment, the only ritual in the Aseret HaDibros, Zachar Yom HaShabbos L'Kodsho. Remember the Shabbos day and sanctify it. So clearly there's a biblical mitzvah of Kiddush. It's an explicit pasuk in the Chumash. The question is, what is debatable is how much of Kiddush is D'oraisa, how much of Kiddush is D'Rabbanan. Well, what are the possibilities? So there are three separate components, or perhaps one component of Kiddush. There's saying words, reading the words of Kiddush. There's saying it over a cup of wine. That's the second one. And the third one is drinking it. So how much, whether is it door number 1, 2, or 3, how much is biblical, how much is rabbinical? So there's a Gemara in the beginning of Nazir, Daf Gimel, Daf Daled, regarding whether a Nazir can drink wine. We know there's a prohibition for a Nazir to drink wine. That's one of the prohibitions of a Nazir. So the Gemara says that a Nazir, not only can he drink Yayin Rishus, optional drinking, but even Yayin the mitzvah, even wine of mitzvah. So the Gemara says, what's wine of mitzvah? Kiddush v'Havdalah. So depending how you learn the Gemara, you come to different conclusions. The Gemara says, like, Mushpa v'yomei mehar Sinai. Like, what do you mean? That it's already commanded on Har Sinai to make Kiddush Friday night. So how can a Nazir take upon himself not to drink wine? So it's a question how you learn it. Is it like a bitmi, or what are you talking about? It's certainly true. So that's the Machlokas Rashi versus the Bali Tosas. It's not really Rashi, it's the Mefarish. But how you learn the Gemara. So Rashi learns the Gemara that a Nazir drinks wine. When a Nazir makes Kiddush Friday night, he even drinks the wine. And Tosas says, what are you talking about? Of course he doesn't drink the wine. What is the issue? What is the machlokas between Rashi and Tosas regarding whether a Nazir drinks the wine? So Rashi clearly holds that all three are biblical. Not only is saying the words biblical, not only making it over the wine, but actually drinking the wine is biblical. And therefore, when the Nazir takes on not to drink wine, it's clearly understood that Kiddush and Havdalah is not included, because those are at least Kiddush anyway. That's not included because there's a mitzvah min Torah to drink wine. And Tosas says a Nazir doesn't drink wine because min Torah there is no mitzvah of drinking wine. That's only a rabbinical mitzvah given later on. So it's a machlokas Rashi and Tosas whether drinking the wine is biblical. Rashi yes, Tosas no. Tosas in Arvei Psachim says even though drinking the wine isn't biblical, but making it over a cup of wine is. So you have to remember it over a cup of wine. So therefore, you have the second and third shita, and the third shita, the way we pass it, is the Rambam, Maimonides. Maimonides is clear in Hilchos Shabbos, Perek Chavtes, Mitzvahs Aseh L'Kadesh B'Dvarim. The biblical mitzvah of Kiddush is with words alone. So we have three shitas in the Rishonim. How much of Kiddush is biblical? The Rambam, this reciting words of praise of Shabbos is enough. One opinion in Tosfos is this, to do it over a cup of wine. We don't have to drink the cup of wine biblically. And the third opinion, Rashi and Nazir, all three components are biblical. To fulfill your mitzvah in Torah of Kiddush, you have to make it over a cup of wine, and you have to drink it. So how do we paskin? So we paskin like the Rambam, that Kiddush b'dvarim is daraisa. That saying Kiddush with words alone, you fulfill your mitzvah in Torah. That is the psak of the Rambam. That's what we assume. Comes along the Magen Avram, one of the later commentators on Shulchan Aruch, and he wants to extend the opinion of the Rambam. The Rambam only says you fulfill Kiddush by taking out the Kiddush and reciting it. You make the bracha of Makadesh HaShabbos, that you say without the Bori Pri Hagafen, and Vayichu is an added addition later on. So you make that bracha of Makadesh HaShabbos, according to the Rambam, you would fulfill your mitzvah, or any words, words of Shevach of Shabbos. So it comes along the Magen Avraham says, based on this, when you daven Friday night, whether you're davening at home or at shul, you can come to shul and not daven, so coming to shul really isn't the answer. The issue is whether you actually daven or not. If you daven Friday night, Shmona Esrei, and when you make the bracha, Barachat Hashem HaKadosh HaShabbos, the Magen Avraham says, based on the Rambam, one fulfills the mitzvah min HaTorah of Kiddush. So by davening Friday night, Shmona Esrei, one fulfills the mitzvah. So the Rambam doesn't actually say that. The Rambam just says Kiddush with words. The Magen Avraham extends it based on a logical, if you take it to the logical extreme, it would come out. If you daven Friday night, you fulfill your mitzvah of Kiddush. That is the opinion of the Magen Avraham. In fact, what's his proof? His proof is, what about when Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos? Where's the Kiddush? Do we make Kiddush Friday night? And I think it's happening again this year. It just happened when Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos. Where's the beef? Where's the Kiddush? So the Magen Avraham's proof is, how do we fulfill our mitzvah of Kiddush that year? By when we daven in the Friday night Yom Kippur davening. So same way it works Yom Kippur Shachol b'Shabbos, it works all year round. That's a separate discussion, but that's one of the proofs of the Magen Avraham. So comes along the Dagul Meravava, alias Slach, alias Noda Yehuda. They're all the same person, different works. But the Dagul Meravava is his work on Shulchan Aruch, and he asked his famous question. The Gemara tells us in Brachas on Daf Chaf Amid Beis, the Gemara in Shvuas Daf Chaf also, that Nashim Chayavos B'Kiddush Hayom Dvar Torah. Women are biblically obligated in Kiddush, just like men. Men and women are equal in terms of their obligation to hear Kiddush Friday night. They're both obligated. What do you mean women are obligated? You can't get a better case of a mitzvah saseh shazman grama. Women are exempt from time-oriented mitzvahs, and I can't make Kiddush today, I can't make Kiddush tomorrow, I can, but it's meaningless. The only time I can fulfill my mitzvah of Kiddush is on Shabbos. What greater time-oriented mitzvah than that? So what do you mean women are chayiv in Kiddush? It's a time-oriented mitzvah that should be exempt. So the Gemara tells us the famous drasha, it talks about the Aseres HaDibros twice in the Torah. One we'll read next week. Zachar Shom HaShabbos L'Kadsho. In Parshas Ve'eschanan, when we read in Dvarim, Shamar Shom HaShabbos L'Kadsho. The Gemara has the famous drasha, Shama V'Zachar B'Dibarecha. We say it in davening, it's actually given together. And the Gemara makes a drasha called Sheyeshnu B'Shmira, Yeshnu B'Zachir. Whoever is included in keeping Shabbos is also whoever is included in the positive mitzvahs as well. So since women have to keep Shabbos, Shamar Shom HaShabbos, so too they're included in the mitzvahs aseh of Kiddush. So clearly, based on the Gemara, no one argues women are chayiv in Kiddush ben HaTorah. So comes along the Duggal Meravav and says, during his time, it's still true, maybe not as true, but it's still widely true, I'd say. Today, the custom is mostly men go to shul. There are more men in shul usually than women. Friday night, so Shabbos also, but Friday night. So the men, let's assume also that women are in davening Friday night, because that's the real issue, not shul, it's davening. So let's assume that the man davened Ma'ariv Friday night, and the woman did not. If the woman did, so it's not a question, but if the man davened, the woman did, which is the normal case, or the more popular case, so it comes out a man fulfilled his biblical obligation of Kiddush in davening Friday night. So when he gets home to make Kiddush al Yayin, he's only obligated rabbinically. A woman who hasn't davened yet is chayiv, she retains her biblical obligation. So how could it be a man who's only chayiv d'Rabbanan now is making Kiddush for a woman who's chayiv ben HaTorah? We have a principle the Gemara tells us in Rosh Hashanah. You have to at least be on the same level. If I'm on a higher level obligation than you, I could do a mitzvah for you. But if I'm on a lower level, I can't. So how could it be that a man goes home, the Minig Yisrael, that the husband, the father, whoever goes home and makes Kiddush for the wives, the daughters, whoever, who are still chayiv in Kiddush ben HaTorah, and he fulfilled his mitzvah ben HaTorah already in davening Friday night. So the Duggal Meravav is very simple. It is a major problem. Take care of the problem, daven at home. The Duggal Meravav suggests a woman should daven Ma'ariv, even if you don't daven all week long, Friday night you should daven Ma'ariv, at least Shmona Esrei, fulfill your mitzvah and HaTorah of Kiddush as well, and therefore it's not a problem. So that's what he says. It is a problem, take care of it. Start praying. However, the Minig Yisrael is not that way, so how do we reconcile the people who, but many who don't have time, they're busy with the kids or other things, they can't daven, they don't have time, so how do you explain it? To the different approaches. The A1 is the Duggal Meravav, it's not really an approach, it's daven. It's a problem, take care of it, go daven. A2 is the Chasam Sofer. The Chasam Sofer says we have a principle in the Gemara we've discussed many times, and we'll probably continue to discuss it many more times, so keep it in mind. A dispute in the Talmud whether mitzvahs tzrichas kavana, whether mitzvahs require intent or not. I always point out, as Neir's putting on his tefillin, he means there's an opinion that says Neir doesn't have to have kavana when he puts on his tefillin. Of course, not everyone says he does. The question is post facto. If he put on his tefillin without the requisite kavana, does he have to go ahead and put them on again if he's with the right? So that's the machloka. So we assume on a mitzvah in our Torah, mitzvah strichas kavana, you'd have to go back and do the mitzvah over again if you took them off and you didn't have the right kavana. However, by a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, we assume keep on going. B'di'evadi yotze, it's okay post facto. So comes along the Chasam Sofer and says, everyone agrees Kiddush b'dvarim is daraisa. That point is not up for debate. That part everyone agrees to, that reading words about Shabbos, Zachar b'peh, is biblical. So the Chasam Sofer says, most people don't even know you can't fulfill your mitzvah, so you're not even a misasa, you don't even know what's going on. But let's assume you're at the shir and you were up and you followed. I'm not making a lot of assumptions here, but hypothetically you actually understood what I was talking about. So therefore, Friday night, you should have negative kavana, not in davening, you should have kavana to be yotze your mitzvah of tefillah, but have negative kavana regarding the mitzvah of Kiddush. Since mitzvah strichas kavana, I don't have a mind to fulfill my mitzvah of Kiddush Friday night. So therefore I go home, I'm still chayiv in Kiddush ben HaTorah, and we live happily ever after, everyone's happy, I make Kiddush for my wife, etc. We're both chayiv ben HaTorah, and it's not a problem. That's the suggestion of the Chasam Sofer. We'll call it A2. A3, we'll call it the Minchas Chinuch's approach. The Minchas Chinuch, so up to now we're assuming, the first two approaches we're assuming that the assumption of the Magen Avraham is correct. By davening Shemona Esrei Friday night, you fulfill your mitzvah, hence we have a problem. I'll give A3 first, I'll continue with that assumption. The Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan says, yeah, you're right, but we have a principle you're forgetting, that we know, let's say every Friday night, let's say one person, different minhag, let's assume every person is chayav to make Kiddush, but yet in most times one person makes it or two. So we have a principle of Shomea Ka'oneh. By you listening to someone else's Kiddush, it's like you made it. So you come to my house, I make Kiddush, it's like you made your own Kiddush. So that's the principle of Shomea Ka'oneh. By you listening to me, however, there's another principle called Yatsa Motzi. Yatsa means even though I already fulfilled my mitzvah, Motzi, I could still continue doing it, because there's a principle, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh. All Jews are responsible for one another. Let's say the Rosh Hashanah, shofar. There's only one person who knows how to blow shofar in town. Let's assume you have two shuls who have to hear. You have Oed Tzedek and you have Adas Israel, and you both have to hear shofar. You only have one. So therefore, the Baal Tekeya, let's say he blows shofar here with the brachas, he could come to Oed Tzedek and blow shofar and make the brachas, because as long as every Jew in Hamilton hasn't fulfilled the mitzvah of shofar, his own mitzvah is lacking. So to here the Aruch HaShulchan writes, it's true I fulfilled my mitzvah of Kiddush, min HaTorah, but as long as there are other Yidden in Hamilton who haven't fulfilled the mitzvah of Kiddush, so I can make Kiddush again. So he says it's not a problem. Yatsa Motzi, one can. So that's the Aruch HaShulchan. So again, working with the assumption of the Magen Avram, but answering why it's not a problem. Comes along the Minchas Chinuch and denies the whole premise of the Magen Avram. He doesn't disagree with the Rambam. The Rambam says it, and he agrees with the Rambam, and we paskin that way, that mitzvahs aseh l'kadish b'dvarim. You fulfill your mitzvah of Kiddush with words alone. However, he says, but davening Friday night, Shemona Esrei doesn't help you. Why? You're not saying words? Well, a lot of people aren't, this rambling on, but let's assume you are. That's not what he means. What does he mean? Because there's a Gemara in Arvei Psachim on Daf Kuf Yud Zayin, which no one seems to disagree with, that we know when we fulfill Shabbos, the two components. It's Zeichel L'Maseh Bereshis. It's we remember God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. And then, as we say, that it's Zeichel Yitzias Mitzrayim. It's as well, it's a reminder that Exodus from Egypt, that God took us out of Egypt. That not only did God create the world, not only is he a Borei, but he's a Manig as well. He still runs the world. He's not living in Shalom Village, retired, but he still runs the world now. So we believe he's a Borei and he's a Manig. So those are the two aspects of keeping Shabbos, and those we know the classical way of why we keep Shabbos, the Lamed Tes Malachas, the 39 prohibited activities, based on the Mishkan. But there's a Tosfos in Arvei Psachim quoting a Medrash. The Lamed Tes Malachas is based on the hard work Paro made the Jews keep. So we have both aspects. So the Gemara says that to fulfill your mitzvah of Kiddush Friday night, it's not enough just to mention Zeichel Maseh Bereshis, but you have to also mention Zeichel Yitzias Mitzrayim. The Gemara has a drasha. It says Zachar Shom HaShabbos L'Kachor. It says Goman Tiskra Shom Seischa V'Eretz Chol Yomei Chayecha. We learn the connection. So in order to fulfill your mitzvah of Kiddush Min HaTorah, you have to also mention Yitzias Mitzrayim. So last I checked, Friday night davening in the Shemona Esrei has no mention of Yitzias Mitzrayim. So the Minchas Chinuch says the whole assumption of the Magen Avram is incorrect. You did not fulfill your mitzvah of Kiddush Friday night in davening. If you don't fulfill your mitzvah of Kiddush, so when you get home, you're still chayav in Kiddush Min HaTorah, and therefore it's not a problem. What do we do with the Gemara in Arvei? We can't deny the Gemara. What do we do with the taina of the Minchas Chinuch? It seems like a good taina. So two possibilities. One is we assume that the Gemara is this an asmachta. It's only a din d'Rabban. It's not a biblical law that you have to mention Yitzias Mitzrayim and Kiddush. It's only a rabbinical law. Or even if you want to assume it's a biblical law, the Biur Halacha, the Chafetz Chaim explains that we have a principle in the Gemara in Brachas. We have a Someh Gula Tefillah, that we have to go straight from the Brachas of Kriya Shema right until Shemona Esrei. So it's true we're not saying Kriya Shema directly in the Friday night davening, but Kriya Shema was saying 2 minutes before. So since we have a principle of Soma Gula Tefillah, that's close enough to fulfill this halacha of Yitzias Mitzrayim, and therefore you still can't fulfill your biblical mitzvah in Friday night davening. So in fact, so that's how the Minchas Chinuch denies the premise. He says you're not yotzei your mitzvah at all. And in fact, based on the Minchas Chinuch, it would come out what? It's true Friday night davening you wouldn't fulfill, but even the Minchas Chinuch will have to deal with, what about Yontif Shechol b'Shabbos? When Yontif falls on Shabbos, we daven a Shalosh Regalim davening. If you're looking at davening Friday night Yontif, there will be Yetzias Mitzrayim in it, so the Minchas Chinuch will have to deal with the question on every Yontif, what do you do, and as well as perhaps Yom Kippur Shechol b'Shabbos. Yeah, we have to see if the Yom Kippur has Yetzias Mitzrayim in it. But according to the Minchas Chinuch, we'll have to deal with the issue as well. And there's another answer we're not going to have time for, so I'll just summarize. So we have the answer of the Duggal Mervavu says, let's solve the problem. Tell your wife to daven Friday night davening. End the discussion. The Chasam Sofer, mitzvah striches kavana. Just don't have kavana to fulfill your mitzvah of Kiddush and davening Friday night. So therefore you're still chayiv in Torah, and that's it. You have the Aruch HaShulchan says it doesn't make a difference. Yat Samot, you can make Kiddush 100 times, because as long as every Jew hasn't heard Kiddush, you have your obligation isn't complete, and therefore you can make Kiddush 10 times if you want to. It's not a problem. Answer number 4 is the Minchas Chinuch, that you're not Yotzei at all, because since there's no Yetzias Mitzrayim in the Friday night davening, so therefore you're still chayiv in Torah, and therefore it's not an issue.